So in my last video, I changed the cartridge port over on that board, got it back into its new case, everything was good, but now I'm left over with this spare PCB. So what I've decided to do is try and make a Gameboy Advance Macro XL with the parts I've got left over. So for this, I don't require the top screen, just require the bottom screen. Now the original case, as obviously the hinges for the top one, so I found this online, so this is on Thingiverse. So the maker of this is Slucid, and he's made an unhinged shell. Again, if you want to use it, make a whole DS, but you don't have them hinges. But what I done, I used his design and I created my own front cover, just with the two buttons for the Game Boy. And what I did, I've done two 3D prints here. One was at 0.2, one was at 0.15, and you can see the 0.15 is a little bit finer. It comes in two parts, which obviously the original one doesn't. Again, this is just so you got to glue them together. If you try to print it all as one thing, it'd be a bit of a mess, really. So I understand why he's done that. So again, what I need to do is line up the front and back, glue them two together, and yeah, see how it performs. So first thing I need to do after 3D printing, just need to remove the supports. Now this I printed in ABS, but you could easily print this in PLA and might get a nicer job of it as well. Although to be fair, this ABS has come out pretty good. So I just need to work my way around with a screwdriver. And again, it's one of them things, once it starts coming, it comes very easy, as you can see. Now what I could do here, I could have filed down the front a little bit more and just sandpapered it off and made it a bit smoother or whatever, but I kind of like that effect right now. I'm just going to try a screen in here, and at this point I don't realise that I'm actually using the top screen and not the bottom screen, but it still seems to fit pretty decently. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a clean up just with the screwdriver, just to clean off any little rough edges here. So that's the screen I was using. The screen I should be using is this one that's foam backed. That's the bottom screen, that's the one that needs to go in here. It's got a tiny little scratch on the front, but again that disappears once the power's on. What I could do, I could remove the digitizer here, and that would remove that scratch anyway, and doesn't really need it, but I'm just leaving it on for now. Just because again it makes it a bit easier to set things up. So I'm just going to use some araldite, and if you've ever used this stuff before, you just need to mix the two halves together and then let it set. Kind of reminds me of that bit in Mission Impossible where he's got red light, green light as he mixes the two together. So just mix this up together. And you see it kind of goes a bit milky coloured, and I'm just going to apply it just with this bit of cardboard here. Now if you're not from the UK, this battery pack I'm using here was from Maplin's Electronics, which has long since closed, but it was kind of like Radio Shack. That would probably be the best way to describe it. And it was very popular in the UK for a while until they just started importing nothing but cheap Chinese stuff, and unfortunately it went under. I don't know if it's still available online or not, but in its dying days I bought a load of battery packs, and this is like one of the last remaining ones that I've got. So I'm just going to try and make sure this lines up properly, the front and the back. If it doesn't, then obviously I need to file out some more. But it's not looking too bad, so I just need to, again, probably use a little bit too much glue around the edge there because it's oozing out a little bit. I just got these little clamps, so I'm just going to clamp the two halves together. So as I'm clamping, I'm trying to make sure I'm not moving this at all. So there it is in position. And what I've done, I've just left this bit of card on the glue, so I know once that's stuck to the, once the two parts are stuck together, I know that's pretty much set. And again, Araldite can set fairly quickly, but I find just leaving it for the full time if you can is probably best. So now it's set, everything's good. What I did was put the buttons in as well, just to make sure everything lined up correctly. Again, I gave it about an hour or so into the process just to make sure it was still movable if needs be, but it was a lot more solid than when I first applied it, and just so it wouldn't stick the buttons down to it or anything like that. That's not looking too bad, really. So now I'm just going to try this screen in here, because obviously now I've got the extra thickness of this back part as well. Just make sure that all goes. So I've got a bit of a gap at the top there. I gave it a little bit of a clean up, but I found it was just... Yeah, so just give it another little clean with a screwdriver just in case there was any residual glue there. I found putting it in the top of the screen first and then putting the bottom half of the screen in, it seemed to go a lot better. So that's looking pretty flush now. Just going to put the membranes back on the back there. Just putting the key membranes on the back. And the other thing, obviously the speaker is usually in the top half section. Now it's going to be in the bottom half, and this space here seems to be the perfect place to put one speaker. So I've just drawn around it just so I know where to drill my holes. And again, in hindsight, what I would do if I was doing this again is actually do this on the actual 3D design. So to make this front half, or adapt this front half from the original design, I used Tinkercad to delete them two buttons that are no longer needed, and yeah, just basically print the whole thing. But again, if I was going to do this again, I would do the speaker section when I did that. And if anybody's interested, please leave me some comments, and if a few people want this, I'll upload this to Thingiverse as well, so you can use it and adapt it however you want this front half that I've already done. And you could probably do a better job of it as well, because it was very basic the way I filled them holes. You can sort of see the silhouette of them a little bit on the front. So unfortunately I don't have my Dremel available, so what I've done is put a bit of tape around a 1mm drill bit, and then I'm just using a normal drill. Just make sure it's straight before I start drilling. That doesn't look too bad. So I'm using something to support it, and yeah, I gotta say, it looks pretty dreadful. Again, I should have spent a bit more time marking this out. So now what I decided to do, for some reason, go for a kind of a bit of a pepper pot design, just drill a load of holes everywhere and see if that made it look better. And just made it look 10 times worse, because now it looks like, looks like an ant colony or something's crawled through there. Yeah, so not overly impressed with my my drilling technique. Again, as I say, if I did this again, I would probably do them holes so they looked a lot better, because as you can see, looks like someone's been shooting at it or something. It just doesn't look right. But with the speaker behind it, it's not going to be that noticeable, luckily. So this should be a very straightforward thing, and if you look at other videos you would think this will take me 2 seconds to do, and to be fair, if you do it properly, yeah, it probably will take you 2 seconds. Unfortunately, I decided to have the brainwave, why bother buying a surface mount resistor when I've got a load of resistors? So first things first though, before I get into the resistor part, so what I'm doing here, I'm just putting down the speaker cables. So you need to go to ground, and that's speaker left, and then if you want speaker right, that's just over to the other side there a little bit, just along that row. So yeah, for some reason I decided this would be a good idea. I've got a 1/2 watt 330 ohm resistor, and again, because this is used to having a top screen, it basically has to be fooled into thinking it's still got a top screen, and to do that you solder a resistor between these 2 points, and it mimics the resistance that a top screen would give it, and it works. However, you can see how tricky it is trying to use such a big resistor on this. And again, I was getting this trouble where I'd solder down one side, and then where I'm using such a big point as well, it's desoldering the other side. So it was getting very frustrating. I did finally sort of get it, and then what I decided to do was bend this resistor underneath. Again though, I would highly recommend not doing it like this, and if you keep watching you'll see how I finally did it. And again, trying to break that link in the middle, and yeah, just desoldered the whole thing. So I was just checking over my wiring here just to make sure everything was okay. And it is. Now, I don't know if you can see by my top finger there, there's SPR0. So if you want to do the right hand speaker, you would go ground into that one, which is right next to SW3, the select button. So after a while of soldering this, basically that point lifted, so I couldn't get that on anymore. So I found that top point also goes to the right shoulder button, or one of the points on the right shoulder button there. So I thought I will solder to there instead. So now that should be okay. So my next thing I need to do is just tin this up and then put my wires onto the speaker. So if you look at the back of the speaker there, you can see the plus is to that one. That's the one I'm putting the red wire to, and then put the black wire to the other one. Now if I put these round the wrong way, it would still work, it's just the sound would be reversed. It wouldn't sound right. It's a very subtle thing, but you would definitely notice the difference on certain games. It would definitely show. So just putting these back now. I'm going to try and put this ball back in again and see what we got. I just get my speaker in place there, and that just sits nice and snug there. Originally I thought I might have to use a little bit of glue or something. All I decided to do was just cover them terminals up just to make sure nothing shorts out on the board. And again, the actual red and black wire are the original red and black wire that was in the top half of the case, so I just desoldered them and soldered them there for the speaker wires. Just putting these connections back in again. And again, if you look at my previous videos, but basically the two bottom ones, there's a little round part that slots out. On the top one, it flips down. So put it all together. Just making sure my shoulder buttons are working okay. Put a battery in. We'll give it a go. Yep, that's not good. So that's telling me it's looking for a top screen that obviously doesn't exist still. So something not quite right with that resistor. So because at this point now I've burnt out them 2 points on that one, I've swapped the board for a different board. A board from another Nintendo DS I had, just so that I could now solder this on. So again, the reason why I was trying to avoid this, as you'll see, is the size of these things. These little resistors are an absolute pain. They're so tiny. There's a reason why factories use robots to do this rather than trying to do it by hand. So it doesn't help, my tweezers seem to be a bit sticky as well, so that's not helping matters there. And as you can see, my giant hand compared to this tiny little resistor, it is so fiddly. Now again, with a resistor you don't have to worry about which way round you put it. It's not polarity sensitive, so either way doesn't matter. So for soldering this down, what I've done, I used a pencil to hold it, and then I've used a smaller nib on my soldering iron to now solder this between these 2 points. Also decided just to try and clear this hole out a little bit, just because the buttons felt a bit sticky, like they were moving but they just seemed a bit tight, so I thought I would just kind of free them out a little bit. And again, probably should have used a little file or something like that rather than just using the side of my pliers, but I thought just to give it a go. And this time, rather than put the back on, I just thought I'll hold the battery in place and try it and see what we get. Okay, that's a good start. We've got a white screen, but that's it, just a white screen. So back to the drawing board again. So I'm just checking the soldering on that resistor, see what we're getting. And also the screen I used in that one was from that other DS, so now I've used that original screen that I was originally going to use with the little scratch on it. That one's back in there again. So now we're just going to put this back together again. So as you can see, I've left the shoulder buttons out right now. I just want to test it with a battery, just make sure we're getting a screen, everything's working correct before I commit fully to putting this back together again this time. Just need to insert the battery back in here and we'll see what we got. Well, we got sound, that's a good start. And we got a screen. However, it looks like the touchscreen isn't working. So let's just take the back off again and we'll see. Yes, that cable's come loose. So just need to reinsert that again and we'll give this a try again. Hopefully this time we've got a fully working Game Boy Advance Macro XL with a touchscreen. Just make sure that other cable's secure as well while we're back here. And then just insert that main cable again to the display. I thought I'd give this really bad copy of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Revival a go. And as you can see, it's obviously not a legit copy with the sticker the way it is. But it does the job. Everything seems to be working perfectly. The buttons are working good. And also, I don't know whether it's the design of this particular case front, but the buttons seem to be recessed a little. And it actually feels quite good, quite responsive. Thought I'd also give this game a go. So this is a legit copy of Robot Wars. And yeah, it's not the best game in the world. But that's all working. I will see you on the next one.